So I wanted to do a little bit of prediction time around what happens to the comic industry over the 8 weeks that are about to happen, over the near term future. With the virus and with everything that's going on, what comes next? So most of these predictions will be wrong, but it's fun to talk about, I guess. Hey everybody, this is Perch. This is like old school Perch. I'm in the car. I have to go take drum roll, please. Yes, I'm going to take a COVID-19 test because I've got a cough and a little bit of breathing and a fever. So not a big fever, just a little fever. So going to get a test. So I'm back in the car. Old school Perch video right here. I think I've adjusted the audio though, so things have been a little bit better. The other thing that's funny is that um, there's nobody on the road. Like I could easily go 140 miles an hour right now. Nobody is going to see anything. So it is. It's all very weird. I'm sure it's weird for all of you listening to this. This will be a wonderful time capsule video sometime from now. Also, because I'm going to do some predictions here. Now, the thing that is hard to kind of figure out is that whatever we predict, we're not dealing with accurate data. The data is changing from day to day. I mean, a couple things that seem fairly certain is parts of the country are rising far more dramatically than others in terms of the virus. And from an economic standpoint, that just means that more is going to be closed, people are going to be more timid, physical goods are going to be a struggle, retail is going to be a challenge, things going to be shut down, social distancing and all the rest continues. And that's going to be our a wait. A lot of the logic of, well, get warmer in the summer and then this will all go away. Probably not. Certainly not from what we're seeing in different parts of the country. That doesn't necessarily seem to be the case. So I think we're in this still for quite a while. And where things, the problem with predictions is what I think is going to happen versus what should happen. And those aren't the same things. Um, if I'm thinking about what should happen, and this is probably a whole video in itself, there should be some really aggressive efforts right now by individuals to make apps and to push digital means to get comics from one place to another. Now, when I say digital means, I don't necessarily mean just digital, although yes, digital comics is one of those, but also things like an app that can help commissions for people to sell comics, for people who are doing things on their own, to get from one place to another. This is all pretty important right now, and we've got to get these kinds of tools out. What I'm hoping happens, because there's just not a lot of cash in this industry, is that people who are in college, people who are wanting to do a project, others can start to use ready-made products like WordPress or Wix or some of these kind of builder type tools to create apps and means to connect people together to get some of these things done that doesn't require a lot of capital up front, because nobody's going to put capital into comics right now with so much unknown. But that's what people should be doing. We should see publishers and creators being a lot more open. We should see creators kind of really doing an assessment of saying, okay, of all the people I blocked, who are the maniacs and who are the people who are trying to actually help, and maybe I disagree with them, but they're bright people regardless who they voted for, and start to separate those things out. If I'm a publisher, maybe now's the time to be a little bit more humble about other people who can help, because unfortunately or fortunately, we're going to have to rely on each other for a while. So identifying, people we may not agree with but are reliable is important, and we need to do a lot more of that. Right now, there's still a lot of kind of bravado of I know best, you don't. But that's all what should be happening. Now, what I predict will happen is this. I think that we are going to be out of new comics into June. I think April's going to go by. I think May's going to go by. And I think June, best case, comics start moving out. In that time period, Diamond is going to need at least 2 to 4 weeks to get operations back and humming again. They've furloughed a lot of people. They got to bring them back on. They got to hire. They got to go through that process. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen quickly. I think that the big publishers are pretty much in a state where they are going to move to releasing things digital in May. I think April will go off, and May they'll start to release digital comics, and there's just going to be the physical will show up at some point, and collections may get broken and other things. I also think the big publishers are going to make some decisions about a number of comics that will never be physical. So, for example, for the Outlawed series, you have things like New Warriors and Power Pack, those kind of limited series. I think those are just somebody at some point is going to go, all right, these are just going to be digital. We're never going to print them, or maybe we'll print them in trade, but we're not going to print monthly floppies for these books, and they're just going to be digital. That's the way it's going to be. I think that's where that's going. Let me step back into, for the moment, what should happen territory for a second. I think that if you're DC, you've got death metal. And somebody points Scott Snyder, Kulo, to this part of the video, but and I know it's not their decision, they've got editors and bosses above them, but what should be happening right now if you're DC is to really rally around, okay, when things get up and we get moving again, we need a good anchor. We need a place where readers can come and get re-energized about the comic. And so what I would do if I were them is I would commission a handful of 4 to 8 page, like Shonen Jump level of material to do some death metal prequels or entries or just some little stories leading up to either what death metal is going to be, or maybe even some stories in the world of death metal that you release early. I would start releasing those, if you could, at the end of the month. They don't exist yet, so that's probably impossible, but I would start releasing a couple of these now in order to kind of get people attached back to comics. Keep in mind it's April. We've missed one comic week, just one, unless you happen to live in a state where things were shut down earlier, in which case you may be a couple weeks out. But a month from now is going to be, you're going to have 4 to 5 weeks of interruption. And comic books, what I think a lot of people fail to realize consistently at the publisher level is that 4 to 5 weeks equals stop reading comics for years for a lot of people. There's studies that show that lapsed comic readers, even 2 months off, show that it takes 2 years to get back into comics. It's not something you just pick up. It's not true of everyone, of course. Some people come back quickly, but a lot of people don't. So this forced interruption will cause people to look at different things. And if you're layering on top of that the fact that, people are going to be conserving cash, who knows what's going to happen to the economy? A lot of people are just going to be trying to figure out how to get back on their feet and get moving again. All these activities are going to take place, and you're not going to have this instant like, oh, good, the comic stores are open, let's go. You're not going to have that. So you have this interruption to deal with. So use the big anchor events that you have. DC's fortunate that they do have death metal on the near horizon. Some work has been done. It's something people are looking forward to. It's got most, if not all, the DC stars inside of it. So it's a perfect, get people back into comics moment. Marvel, on the other hand, doesn't have one of these. Empire is not something people have been clamoring for. It doesn't have everybody. You've got the universe kind of more split and fractured up, even with the Avengers doing one thing in one book and a different thing in another book. So Marvel doesn't have that kind of thing. So if I'm Marvel, I predict, or I would like, they should be thinking about this kind of rallying moment. Some people in the comic industry were talking about, hey, what we need to save the comic industry is a DC Marvel crossover. That probably is more, at this current moment in time, would benefit Marvel more than DC. I think Marvel does need something like that. They don't have a ready-made kind of big event rallying moment, whereas DC does. So I think Marvel, that makes sense for Marvel. I don't know if it makes much sense for DC, but Marvel definitely could use that. But kind of back into prediction land, I think, we're looking into June, earliest case, before we see physical comics again, and even that might be optimistic. I think July might be even a safer time. I think that digital, the wall will break on that in May, probably much to the objection of retailers, but, again, if the retailers being smart, they'll realize that they just can't continue to have comic readers just not consuming any comics at all. Unfortunately, the other problem there is that you are going to have this gap. And if you do go digital, I think that the big companies there's not enough money in digital. So Marvel, DC, the independents, they can't profit off of digital right now. It's not like if they said, hey, we're not releasing physical comics, everybody go to digital. 100% of their profits and their margin and what they make doesn't immediately hop over to digital. In fact, they'd be lucky if a third hopped over to digital. And given that most publishers are operating on a razor-thin margin as it is, a third of what they were making for a period of time is not enough money. And then you got a different kind of game over for some publishers. I do think we are going to see some publishers halt operations out of this. Absolutely. I think that the barometer that we have to look at is will things slowly return to normal? Meaning, slowly, state by state, things start to open up. Is it going to be a more immediate thing where everyone starts to open up at once? Do we hit May and June and the numbers have fallen and we look like China, assuming those numbers are not flat out lies, which they are? Um, that is that what it's going to look like? Probably not. So that's the challenge. What I do think is going to happen out of all this is that we are going to see some new comics get made. Some people go into crowdfunding, although that's not the best solution in a lot of cases because crowdfunding still relies on printers and parts of its infrastructure and disposable cash. I think this is going to be something that crams down aggressively what people are spending on crowdfunded comics. Unless you're a super big name, and even there, I do not think it will hold. Charging $25 for a crowdfunded book is a non-starter in this new world. That's going to have to be different now. So you're going to have to see comics prices fall there. The vanity crowdfunded projects cannot live under this model, period. And people who are denying that right now are in for a very rude awakening. I think you're going to see some people lightening up about quality. This whole concept of newsprint versus glossy versus whatever. I think it's going to move to, hey, what's a format that actually gets the comics into the hands of people who can read them, and that's it. Like that's that's all that's going to matter for a period of time, whatever it's in. Where is a printer available, and where can people actually buy a comic? That's where it's good. That's it. That's all that matters. Um, I think that you're going to see probably a lot more rage and a lot more anger out of creators and various people in the industry. You're going to have people chew on each other more, and keep in mind it's a factor of two things. One, fear of people just being afraid of kind of what's happening and what's going on. But probably more than that, you had a lot of creators and a lot of people within comics who became little mini celebrities, and they weren't used to being celebrities. I mean, these are people who probably are not they had no training for what now has occurred in their lives, and so now faced with a work stoppage and people maybe not fawning over them and no conventions, there's going to be some anger and some bitterness out of that. It's that's not the world we live in now, and that's going to be a major shock for some people. All in all, I mean, hopefully people keep their heads and they behave, but I guess we'll see. I think we're more likely to get a burst of bad behavior out of this before things get better, and that's just that's again that's the world we're going to live in for a little bit of time. I hope everyone out there is staying healthy, staying safe, and more importantly, keeping your head. It doesn't do us any good to get all pissy with each other and start to attack and choose now is the time to have that petty fight we've really been wanting. That it's not the time. So please just keep your head, support each other. Consider finding two people who were jerks to you in the past, and forgive. Just forgive, and let's just try and get like spreading a virus. Let's get some nice behavior to each other, and maybe we all just kind of get healthier and get better together. That would be a nice outcome. Leave me your comments below on your predictions. Would love to hear what you have to think. Otherwise, like, subscribe, click the bell for notifications if you like. Follow me on Twitter at Comic Perch. Hey, stay safe out there, stay healthy, and thanks for listening.